The legal framework for self-driving cars, what needs to be done? The prospect of self-driving cars has captured the public imagination for several years. While the technology is still being developed and refined, it is clear that self-driving cars will have far-reaching implications for transportation, the economy, and public safety. With this in mind, it is essential that we have a clear legal framework in place to regulate the use of self-driving cars. At present, the regulatory environment for self-driving cars remains in flux. A number of states have already passed laws allowing for the testing and operation of autonomous vehicles, but there are still many issues that need to be addressed at the federal level. In particular, there are several critical areas where further regulation is needed. One issue that requires attention is the liability framework for autonomous vehicles. In traditional car accidents, determining who is at fault is relatively straightforward. However, with self-driving cars, the question of liability becomes much more complex. As a result, it is essential that we have a clear legal framework in place that outlines who is responsible in the event of an accident. Another area that requires further regulation is data privacy. Self-driving cars will generate enormous amounts of data that will need to be stored and protected. This data could include information on the car's location, speed, and direction, as well as data on the car's occupants. It is important that this data is stored securely and that the privacy of individuals is protected. However, there is currently no legal framework in place to protect this data, and it remains unclear who will be responsible for ensuring that this information is stored securely. In addition to these issues, there are also significant questions around the regulation of autonomous vehicles themselves. For example, who will be responsible for ensuring that self-driving cars meet certain safety standards? Will there be minimum performance standards that must be met before autonomous vehicles can be allowed on the road? How will we ensure that the software used by these vehicles is safe and reliable? To address these complex questions, it is likely that we will need a combination of federal and state-level regulations. At the federal level, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, has taken steps to address some of these issues. For example, in 2016, the NHTSA issued guidelines for the testing and deployment of autonomous vehicles. These guidelines provide recommendations on issues such as data privacy, cybersecurity, and the safety of autonomous vehicles. However, these guidelines are voluntary, and there is currently no legal mandate for automakers to comply with them. This has led to a patchwork of regulations across different states, with some states adopting these guidelines and others enacting their own regulations. To address this, there have been calls for greater federal regulation of autonomous vehicles. One bill that has gained traction in Congress is the Self-Drive Act, which was passed by the House of Representatives in 2017. This bill provides a framework for the testing and deployment of autonomous vehicles and establishes a clear regulatory structure for the industry. While the bill has not yet been passed by the Senate, it represents an important step forward in regulating self-driving cars. In addition to federal regulations, it is also essential that individual states take steps to regulate the use of self-driving cars within their borders. While federal regulations will provide a baseline level of safety and consistency, different states may have different needs and priorities when it comes to autonomous vehicles. As technology continues to advance and self-driving cars become more common on our roads, it is important that we consider the potential economic implications of this new form of transportation. One potential benefit of self-driving cars is that they could reduce the number of accidents on our roads, which would lead to lower insurance premiums and fewer medical expenses. Additionally, self-driving cars could reduce the number of cars on our roads, which would reduce the amount of traffic congestion and the amount of pollution generated by cars. However, there are also potential negative economic impacts of self-driving cars. For example, if the cost of operating a self-driving car is lower than the cost of owning and operating a traditional car, we could see a significant drop in demand for new cars. This could have a ripple effect throughout the economy, as auto manufacturers, dealerships, and other businesses that rely on car sales would see a decline in revenue. In addition to these economic impacts, there are also significant societal implications to consider when it comes to self-driving cars. One potential benefit is that self-driving cars could provide greater mobility to individuals who are unable to drive due to age, disability, or other factors. This could lead to greater independence and quality of life for these individuals. However, there are also potential negative societal impacts to consider. For example, self-driving cars could lead to job losses in the transportation industry, particularly in sectors such as trucking and delivery. Another important consideration when it comes to self-driving cars is the impact they could have on urban planning and land use. If self-driving cars lead to a decline in car ownership and a reduction in traffic congestion, this could lead to a greater emphasis on pedestrian-friendly and bike-friendly urban design. Additionally, the reduced need for parking could free up valuable urban space for other uses. Furthermore, as self-driving cars become more common on our roads, it is important to consider the potential ethical implications of this new technology. For example, self-driving cars are programmed to make split-second decisions in emergency situations, such as whether to swerve to avoid hitting a pedestrian or stay on course and risk hitting them. These decisions are often based on algorithms that prioritize certain outcomes over others, such as minimizing harm to the vehicle's occupants or prioritizing the safety of pedestrians. While these decisions may seem straightforward, they raise important ethical questions. Who decides which outcomes are prioritized in these situations? Should we prioritize the safety of the vehicle's occupants over other road users, or should we prioritize the safety of all road users equally? These are complex questions that will require careful consideration as self-driving cars become more prevalent on our roads. Another ethical consideration is the potential for self-driving cars to be used for surveillance. As self-driving cars collect vast amounts of data about their surroundings, it is possible that this data could be used to monitor individuals without their knowledge or consent. This could raise significant privacy concerns and may require the implementation of strict regulations to protect individuals from unwarranted surveillance. Finally, it is important to consider the potential psychological and social impacts of self-driving cars. As individuals become more reliant on self-driving cars, they may experience a sense of detachment from the act of driving itself. This could have implications for our relationship with transportation and may lead to a decline in the pleasure and freedom associated with driving. In addition to the potential implications for transportation, the economy, and public safety, self-driving cars may also have a significant impact on the environment. As mentioned earlier, self-driving cars have the potential to reduce the number of cars on our roads, which would lead to lower levels of traffic congestion and air pollution. To address these potential environmental impacts, it may be necessary to enact policies that encourage the use of public transportation, biking, and walking. Additionally, policies that incentivize the use of electric and hybrid vehicles could help to mitigate the impact of self-driving cars on the environment. Another concern when it comes to the environmental impact of self-driving cars is the energy consumption required to operate these vehicles.